Hello, everyone. We'll get started with the Sadhguru Vandanam. Nithyanandam Paramasukadam Kevalam Jnanamurtim Tvanvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasyadiraksham Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadi Sakshi Bhutam Tam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Welcome! Welcome everyone to Yoga from the Source. We are excited to be back with you guys today.
Yeah.
Live streaming!
This is our first live stream, so we're pumped.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks to you guys, we can go live now. So we really, really appreciate your guys' support and sharing of this channel. We are really so grateful for you guys. So.
Absolutely. And today we're excited. We recently watched, everybody's talking about the Game Changer documentary.
On Netflix.
Mm-hmm. If you haven't heard of it, it's all about going to a plant-based diet. Specifically following around various professional athletes, but also showing that, and not just professional athletes, but amateur athletes as well, mm-hmm. and showing the incredible benefits of going to a plant-based diet, and not only just for athletes, but for your regular folk as well.
Yeah, and it's an eye-opener for sure. I think it was very well done. And we just wanted to discuss a little bit about it with you guys today. If you have or have not seen it, hopefully we can give you a comprehensive insight into what we experienced or what we liked about it. And I hope that you all go watch it if you haven't yet. It's whether you are vegan or not, I think it's really important to see. I think it's so vital to get the right information nowadays, and it's hard to find on your own. And I think that these kind of documentaries are becoming more and more popular because people are starting to wake up to the fact that nutrition is not what we've been told for all these years. And I mean, this isn't a new thing, right? Throughout the generations of nutrition timeline in the US and in other countries, it's changed. Every decade, there's so many changes to what modern science understands about nutrition, right? Mm. I mean, they used to tell people to take a tablespoon of oil every single day of margarine, and now we know that's one of the worst things for your body. They used to tell people that lead and mercury was okay in our tap water, and that was good for you, right? So there's always this evolution happening as we learn, and that's what I think this documentary does a great job of showcasing, that there's a lot of misconceptions we all hold about plants, protein, what really meat and animal protein gives us, how our body digests it, and how the body really does function and how it can function in its prime. And I think that's the coolest thing about the documentary for sure.
Yeah, and then of course there's always going to be that butting of heads with ideologies, belief systems. It didn't take long for some debunking videos to surface on YouTube. Mm. Joe Rogan, he's a very popular podcaster, which I'm sure you probably all know, but he's come out and spoken against the documentary as well, which is still hard to fathom, hard to believe.
But hey, to each his own, when somebody's really glued in their lifestyle choices, obviously they're going to defend them, Mm-hmm. That's all it really is. I truly believe that if he wasn't talking from his own choice, he wouldn't be saying what he's saying. You know what I mean? If he wasn't so adamant in his own experience or his own choice of eating meat and always being a proponent of it, he wouldn't necessarily be saying what he's saying, against all this. But that's another story. It's really fascinating, though. I think one of the coolest things I loved about the documentary, so we'll share with you guys quickly, and then you can share whatever your little nugget of wisdom was, is this is something I didn't know. Being in the plant-based community for many years now, this was really juicy information to me. So one of the arguments behind meat eating and getting protein from meat And having meat as a part of the human diet has very, very much been one of the main pillars of that argument. I've heard time and time again from professionals and doctors alike, has been that human beings have needed meat. And through archaeological evidence of human history and the timelines of our cells, our human cells throughout thousands of years, that we needed meat. And this is what allowed our brain to develop. This is what gave us the, different intellect, different consciousness, and just moreover that we needed it in our diet. And sorry about that technical glitch. And basically what it was sharing is that right throughout these years, we used the evidence of what we found in the archaeological timeline, right? For example, we saw a lot of knives in the caveman ages and the Paleolithic times. There was sharp tools, there was skeletons of animals, and so naturally what the argument, the history that kept being told was that human beings were based primarily in meat eating as a nutrition, because that's the evidence that was found. But what I found super eye-opening, there was, I believe from UCLA, a bunch of professors and students of archaeology that were sharing in this documentary. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they were sharing about how that's actually been already proven as a myth for many years now, and just nobody's talking about it because it was this old argument that's being recycled, right? And we know that's what human beings do. When we learn something, we hold on to it, and a lot of times it lasts for much longer than is actually correct. So anyways, it's been well known in the community that this was basically misconstrued evidence. The reason being is, that's what was left over in fossils. Bones last longer than anything else, and plants dissolve much quicker and they don't leave the same type of fossils. So for all these years, we weren't finding plant fossils. We weren't finding the same type of evidence. And so it was like we were only getting one piece of that puzzle, and we painted a false picture around it. Well, now they have discovered for a few years now that there's a new way to find fossils they call microfossils. And they started finding that plants actually break down into what they call microfossils. And what they found is that, shocker, early humans were primarily vegetarian. And they have now archaeological evidence of this. They have fossil evidence of this. And this old argument it's not caught up with the modern evidence. And so I found that really eye-opening, is that pillar that's been held onto for so long, it was actually a false story to begin with, is that humans primarily always got their protein from plants. Yes, there was definitely hunting involved, but primarily their pillar was plant protein. And so it was a whole different story than what we've learned all these years in school, all these years in our own research. So I thought that was really eye-opening, and I hope that more people see that.
Yeah, and I mean, as we mentioned, the documentary is built around athletes, and as a former athlete, I can say from the transition of going from a meat diet to a plant-based diet, there's a lot of question marks and concerns arise within you, because your body is literally your paycheck. If it's not performing at its highest level, then you're not going to have food on your plate, basically. And so it's a really big decision for athletes to make this. And so if a professional athlete, and not only a professional, but an Olympian, is choosing to make this decision and going all in on it, that's a big statement. It's not like just your everyday Joe that doesn't have to really rely on a healthy protein intake. Athletes need to push their body to the limit each day. So unless they're recovering faster, recovering as much as they need to be with the foods that they're getting, or with the foods that they were getting with the meat diet, it's just I've been watching a lot of questions on, or people doubting the videos, and to see people that don't exercise question athletes on why and question this diet is really tough, because they're sitting there, never exercised in their lives, and they're saying you become weaker, you become your body disintegrates, they're saying. You'll age faster. When they have no basis, they don't have any personal experience from that. And so from
it's just a deep programming.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate. But from an athletic standpoint, as I said, these people are pushing their bodies to the limit. And so if anybody has any doubts, you can look to the people that are really performing at the highest level possible and still thriving on these diets. And that, to come back around, that I was one of those people. I transitioned that diet of a lot of steak, a lot of chicken, a lot of fish, completely cutting it out and cutting out eggs, and still thriving.
That's awesome. And yeah, just for you guys who saw or didn't see the documentary, I mean, just as an example, the #1 world champion of heavy weightlifting is vegan, completely vegan.
And he himself said that his numbers all went up after
he transitioning.
Yeah. So yeah, he may have gotten big. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger's in the documentary, and everybody knows he was eating a ton of steak and a ton of meat to get to that size. And so, like, that's one of the ways that they're debunking Arnold Schwarzenegger on this one. But
that's just because he's not doing what he was doing. He's not bodybuilding, obviously.
But the world's strongest man right now is vegan, and in the past 4 or 5 years, I can't remember exactly how long they said, but his numbers have increased. He's gained more weight. He's gained more strength on the vegan diet. So it's obviously possible, and really only time is going to be able to showcase this, because people are literally saying that you're going to die sooner, and
there's very prolific evidence to the contrary already, because there have been people actually really, which I also didn't know until I read this really good book about the history of the hamburger, really random. But I learned that the vegan or vegetarian movement started much earlier than most of us know in the US. It started even in as early as the 40s and 50s. That there was an existing vegetarian population, and it kind of then hit a slope, and then when the hippie movement started in the 60s and 70s, it started getting the bad rap that it has today of, oh yeah, like those plant-eating people, like they're a little weird, that whole concept of pigeonholing people who are plant-based as, on the fringes of society has been an argument for decades, and we need to deconstruct that, and understand that it was political propaganda and always has been, and it was an old dialogue that's just being recycled. But there was even the oldest U.S. Olympian ever to compete in the Olympics, a woman, biker. What do you call that? Is there a name for the cycling?
I don't know.
Speed cycling or something? She's completely vegan. Oldest ever U.S. Olympian athlete. She was like in her late 40s, and they won. So I mean, it's just like she said she just outdoes all of her teammates every time, and they're just like annoyed with how much energy she has and how long she can go and her resilience. And I think maybe you can shed a little light on that. What I found really interesting, not being an athlete and hearing from that perspective, is if I was an athlete or wanted to push my body to that level or compete at that level, I think it's such eye-opening and juicy information to have, hearing all these professionals comment about the recovery time. And that's something that even doctors back up. Even doctors who don't push plant-based diet and who are still on the meat mindset still acknowledge that the recovery time for plant-based diet is irrefutable. The body's inflammation levels are just uncomparable on meat or on animal protein versus plant protein. And the recovery time is like, I think, double as fast on or more on plant protein. And so just like with that tidbit, I feel like, how can you not want to at least test it out? You know what I mean? Like, just test it out if you're trying to be high performance.
I mean, recovery is extremely relative for each individual, and to say recovery time is twice as fast, like I just know that the debunkers are going to jump on that one. It's all personal experience though, and I can say that yes, my recovery did increase. To say it was 2 times as fast, I'm really not certain about that. However, just looking at recovery from a standpoint of absorbing nutrition to give your muscles and your body the right nutrients they need to heal. We know that a plant-based diet, you can absorb nutrients better. We know that it's healthier for your gut bacteria. We know that on almost every level, every dimension, comparing consuming meat to plant-based nutrition or substances, that the body is going to assimilate the food better, and it's going to circulate the nutrients better, and you're going to get more from your body, and its abilities to recover is going to increase. Just with yes, it was I was faster at recovering, and it was interesting to see, because you have to completely change everything that you know about the way you eat, especially as an athlete, you know?
Yeah, and it's a journey. I think that's where a lot of times there's a decent amount of people that are in that phase where they absolutely are absorbing and hearing a lot of information and knowledge about plant-based diet, but they're at that point where they're overwhelmed with the switch, you know, and it's that decision fatigue, that delay that's happening with how to move over, you know, and how to transition and how to start moving that direction. And that was, I think that's everyone's biggest hurdle in the very beginning. But like anything, it takes like a little bit of research and prep. And once you do that and give that to yourself, it's an easier transition when all you really have to learn is new recipes. Replacements for recipes you knew already is the even easier way to go. And you don't need to go like extreme raw or extreme whole foods based in the beginning. If that's not what you're eating now, that's going to be obviously really hard for you. So you want to think of ways you can incorporate in meals that you already used to, things that you know how to cook, and then what you can sub in to start moving towards plant-based diet. But just to get to some of your guys' questions too, I was seeing one comment saying, you know, what about growing your own food? And absolutely, I think that's 1000% the best way to go, especially moving forward. I mean, really, it's sad to say, but the state of our agriculture right now is already on a steep decline with the quality of our food, and I think it's only going to keep moving that direction, at least for a little while. And the best thing you can do for your body is absolutely grow your own food. I mean, even in the Vedas, the Sanskrit scriptures, it talks about how important it is to have your food growing around you and eating local. That's a huge part of Ayurveda, the science of life, is eating foods which are fresh and local and in season. That's a huge part of it. And it's easy. It saves money, it saves you time, and you can, anywhere that you are, you should be eating what's happening there, what's growing there for that climate. Eat local, go to farmers markets. You really do save a lot of money too, shopping that way versus going to a grocery store. I even know for ourselves, since we've been back in the US, that's been a learning process for us as well of how to get that in the best way possible. But absolutely, I think going that direction is the best. If you don't have space, get a planter box, go indoor, like a few indoor plants at the very least if you can, and start working your way there. Like, we're so blessed that my grandpa here at our property has a huge garden in the back, huge garden. Grows a bunch of different vegetables and some fruit, so it's a really cool thing to at least even get some little things here and there for our meals from the garden itself, and it's a gift, definitely. So I think we should all start moving that direction. Absolutely.
I think one key thing that I would just want to touch on as well is everything in moderation. Again, I'm trying to respond to some of the criticisms of the documentary. One person was talking about how kale is actually not good for you, and people that are going to veganism, transitioning to veganism, their digestion is actually struggling, and they're having various different health issues because of the foods that they're now eating. And yeah, of course, I mean, you have to have everything in moderation. Kale is not something that you should just be consuming on its own.
Yeah.
It's a very tough, heavy, leafy green. It's good to have every now and then. Grow it in your garden, but don't have it and rely on it on its own, because it is
superfood. You know, I think people, they'd make that mistake a lot.
And then it gives the whole movement a bit of a bad rap, because people are so focused on just one or two substances, and so just making sure that you do blend in a lot of different varieties of getting your greens, getting your proteins, etc.
Yeah, it's important to mix in all of the different nutrients, which means colorful. You need to eat colorfully. You need to eat in all the food groups, not just one. And I think that's sometimes also a mistake people make when they transition. And one thing also is that when we move to plant-based, what I noticed is a lot of times people try it out for a few weeks and then they make the mistake of feeling a lot of changes happening in their body, feeling different, feeling maybe like their tummy's upset or they're having some detox happening, and they mistake the problem. And they really, really start to worry about the vegan diet being an issue, the vegetarian diet being an issue, and they mistake the problem being the plant food, the plant-based proteins, instead of that their body is obviously going through a big shift. You have to give enough time for you to actually see what your detoxified body can actually handle and respond to. Because when we've eaten, especially when we've accumulated meat and dairy for many, many years, just so you guys know, even if I'm not even speaking from like a vegan perspective, just a general like nutrition awareness perspective is that meat is extremely hard to digest. And what it does is it gets stuck in our digestive tract and it starts to rot. Now what happens is if you have meat even more than once a day, especially even if you have red meat every day, just that alone is not able to be processed by your gut. It gets stuck in your really, really long intestinal tract, and it can't move its way through. And what starts to happen is it starts to rot, and starts to rot, and starts to rot. And so what happens is you start to lose the ability to digest your food properly, and nothing's coming out, and it's just accumulating. So you have to understand that you have to allow some time, enough time for your body to process, so that you can move forward on a fresh slate. So at least give yourself a few months in the very minimum of your transition and seeing what the results actually will be after that. Once your body has really shed a lot, don't mistake that those effects are from the diet itself.
Yeah, if there's an audio issue right now, let us know. Apologize for that. We're working on that.
Any questions we got going on in the live stream? Sorry for the audio issue, everyone. First time live streaming the podcast, so I hope that was not too terrible.
Fair amount of static. Unfortunate. Okay. Well, if it's a fair amount of static and everybody, should we just end it and I don't want to give a bad experience here.
Yeah. Okay, well, sorry so much for this, guys. We will try again on the next video to fix this issue. But thank you for joining us, those that did, and we will see you guys on the next podcast.
Yeah, sorry about that. We'll technical glitches happen. We'll come back and we'll do better next time, I guess. We'll try and sort this out. So thank you very much if you did tune in, and we appreciate you sticking it out with us thus far. And we will see you guys on future videos as well. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamedavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sarvam Bhagavan Sri Nithyananda Paramashivam Adhikara Paramastu Om